Author's House. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's author interview. I'm Gab from Authors Press, and I'll be your host. We are thrilled to have Martha Rowlett with us, the author of Weaving Prayer into the Tapestry of the Life, sharing insights into her fascinating literary world. Without further delay, let's dive into our conversation with Martha Rowlett. Hi, Martha. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And without spoiling the book, please tell us what your book, Weaving Prayer into the Tapestry of Life, is all about.
Okay. My name is Martha Rowlett, and I am a United Methodist minister, retired and living in North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, at a Methodist retirement community and enjoying the privileges of retirement. But I have been working on this prayer book for a number of years. I started as a member of a family that was very church going, and my family goes all the way back to my grandfather, who was a Sunday school superintendent at a little country church from the time he was a teenager until he died, which was a 60-year period. He was Sunday school superintendent. So you can see what's in my genes. I have also have a family that are very active in the church, and we have over the years, our family had a reputation for being in the worship service every time the door was open. And this is my father and the son of the man who was at Sunday school every Sunday. I am the middle child on the back row, and we all went to Sunday morning, Sunday evenings, and Wednesday nights, and Sunday summer Bible school, and whatever else they had. So it was a church-going family, and we had relatives who were also church-going in all directions, up and down and sideways. So I grew up with a lot of prayer and with a lot of experience in the church. But the place where this story really begins was when I became an ordained Methodist minister. But now you had another question in there in the middle of that.
Yeah. Can you tell us what your book, Weaving Prayer into the Tapestry of Life,
It's
is all about?
It's about weaving prayer into the tapestry of your life.
Perfect. That's very
And
touching.
and it has a lot of different points in your life at which you could weave your prayer. And I think I assumed that all of us are, in a sense, weaving the tapestry of our life, and we're weaving the tapestry of our life into the world that God is weaving around us. And so the role of prayer is in that context. So
That's very touching. Thank you for sharing that. What inspired you to write a book focused on weaving prayer into daily life?
okay. I had, as I said, grown up in a family that was very rich in history, family history. But most of it was traditional prayer, and a lot of it was asking prayer, and asking for ourselves and asking for others and asking for the world. But when I became an ordained minister, I was appointed by the bishop to a very large and very sophisticated, highly educated church within walking distance of the Stanford University campus. And the congregation that I was appointed to had 80 PhDs in its midst. And my senior pastor liked to preach. So he didn't want this new young pastor coming along to be in competition for preaching space. So I was assigned to write a number of the prayers for the worship service. And a Christian worship service includes a number of different kinds of prayer. So I was dealing with prayers that began the service, prayers in the middle of the service, and all the other functions of a worship service. So I discovered the poverty of my own prayer life. And I realized that having to write for this very thoughtful, very intelligent, very eager to pray congregation, I was going to need to expand my vision. So I began to major in work on prayer. And I ended up being the person in that part of the church that was the specialist in prayer, because I was spending a lot of time in developing prayers and in publishing prayers. They even published them in the church newsletter. So I began to have a name for prayers, but I was doing it for them because I knew they've come there to worship in order to be engaged in prayer. And I discovered the wealth of experience that is available to Christians in prayer. So I got started on that, and then I got married, and my husband was a professor at the School of Theology at Claremont, and faculty spouses could get degrees free because we were faculty spouses. So I enrolled in the doctoral program in theology and did a doctoral college on the theology of prayer. So I had 2 years of really intensive academic engagement in it. When I got through and presented my project, my professor said, "Martha, you need to rewrite this in common everyday language that everybody can understand. Let that academic stuff be your leading point and let you move into the real world. And you need to publish that because this is material that people could use." So I thought, well, hey, what's to lose? What's to be lost? And so I rewrote it in everyday language, and it was published, and it sold very well. And that first book was named In Spirit and in Truth. And this surprised me and then I was invited to do a lot of retreats and workshops and things like that for people on prayer. So I went even deeper than I had gone. So then later, about 10 years later, I was a very young woman when I did that. And that 10 years later, I decided I had a lot more good material that could go in there. And so I did a second edition, and the publishing company said, "Oh, that's too different. You can't do that as a second edition. You're going to have to put it out as a new book." And so I put this one, which is Responding to God, and it lasted for a while. And then I retired, and I decided I had gathered a lot more things that ought to be in this book. So I went to another publisher, same thing. Needs to be a new book. If it's going to have that much change, needs to be a new book. And that's where weaving prayer into the tapestry of your life came from. And it's, of course, is my favorite because it's the richest. And I can say that because the others are not available anymore. So that's the answer to a long answer to a short question. So
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Diving a little bit into the book cover, what was the reason behind selecting a picture of a waterfall and a rainbow for the cover of your book?
all right. I've got to have another book for that. This book is the final, or at least so far the final. I've been thinking about some other new directions, but this one has on the front of it a waterfall and a rainbow. And the rainbow is the most puzzling to people. Why on earth put a rainbow on the front of a book on prayer? And I said, well, that a rainbow is the spectrum of colors. And so you have all of the colors of the rainbow are called the spectrum. And the prayers in this book are the spectrum of Christian prayer. And so I start with beginning prayers and then praise prayers and then confession prayers and Thanksgiving prayers and all sorts of prayers, so that there is a whole spectrum of Christian prayer in this book. And that seems totally logical to me. Just use a rainbow on the front and say it's the spectrum. So
I love how you carefully chose those images, very meaningful. Are there any unique aspects or unusual elements in your book?
yes, all of the books from the very beginning, all of them have had in common that there are different chapters about different colors or different shapes or different kinds of prayer. So you have the variety of kinds of prayer, but you deal with them one at a time. And so the book begins with chapters being on different kinds of prayers, so that you focus primarily in the reading on beginning prayers or confessional prayers or asking prayers or Thanksgiving prayers. And so there's a chapter or two chapters on each one of those. And at the end of the chapter, there's another 3-page thing called prayer prompts. And it will take you through all of the different kinds of prayer, starting out with just a phrase or a short prayer that the person who is praying can use that as an example. For example, the first prayer prompt, it starts with a centering prayer, which is a time when you've been rushing through the day and you've been doing all these other things and your mind is full of 1,000 things, but you think, I'd like to have some prayer time. So you begin with centering prayer. And this one is, as a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, oh God. It's me, it's me, it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer, which then turns your mind out. And then it says, okay, it's me, it's me, it's me, oh Lord, and you pray your own prayer. Or you let this just be the opening. Then the next one is praise. And this one is a beginning or a launching or a starting prayer for praise. This is a day, an hour, and a moment that you have made, O Lord. I give you thanks for this opportunity to be alive and to praise you for who you are and what you do. And then they say, I praise you, ... And you take off. And why do you want to praise God today? And this is the place where you're prompted to prompt that way. And then there'll be a prayer of confession that makes a regular and ordinary prayer of confession. God, see, everybody sins and falls short of what you call us to be. As I turn my attention to your presence with me, I am aware that this is true of me, even on my best days. I deeply regret opportunities to do your will that I have missed and hurt or damage that I have caused. I confess that I have not lived the way you want me to live and in these ways. So forgive me, O God, and give me a fresh start, ... And then you make your own confession. So they are prayer prompts. And it's for 7 different kinds of prayer at the end of each chapter. So the chapter is about a certain kind of prayer, but the prayer prompts take you through all of the others, but on the subject of the prayer that you have just been reading. So it is each a chapter that is instruction about one dimension of prayer that is combined with a prayer prompt list of prompts for all the other kinds of prayer that are on the subject of the chapter. Then you go to the next chapter and you've got instruction, history, background on another kind of prayer, and another series of prayer prompts. Now, I did this for myself because I wanted discipline in my prayers. And I wanted to be able to cover the whole spectrum of prayer on a fairly regular basis. But I was having a habit of just getting whatever prayer I was feeling the biggest need for and praying that day. So this was developed as a discipline, so that after each chapter, I have a prayer prompts list to walk through, to pray through. And that's a discipline to expand my prayer life. And when I did retreats for groups and spoke with groups and I explained this to them, they were eager to see my prayer prompts and to begin the practice of going through the spectrum of prayer on a more regular basis, not just to glom on to one kind and stick with it. So that's the unique and unusual part of it. So does that answer that?
Yes, thank you for giving us a good preview of your book. That's
And
very
I
important.
think you won't find that anyplace else because I created it for me.
Perfect. Thank you. How did you choose the 10 familiar ways Christians pray that are explored in your book?
Well, that's what each chapter is. It takes us through those different ways that, and I had not done a lot of praise. You know, my prayer life experience had not been a lot of praise, and I have learned the joy and the happiness bringing that comes along with time just spent in praising the Creator for the creation. So, and different dimensions of it on different occasions. So,
I can relate to that. Very inspiring. Can you share a personal experience or story that influenced the writing of this book?
oh, well, being up in front of that congregation on Sunday mornings and looking out at a couple of 300 people, very beautiful people, just wonderful human beings who had a lot of influence in the world because they were faculty members of this big university, many of them were. And that influenced me to get up and get going on understanding prayer and being able to interpret it and share it with other people. So I think that was one of it, was motivation.
That's very heartwarming. Thank you for sharing that. What do you hope readers will take away from the chapters and prayer prompts in your book?
I hope that they will take away from it eagerness to include this in their day and joy at the possibility of listening. Now, there's one of the chapters in the book that is listening prayer. And as I get older, and I am getting older, I find that my prayer life is becoming more listening. And I can remember as a child that God was just like Santa Claus. And when you wanted something or needed it, you asked God and you expected God to give it to you. And as I have matured, I have come to the understanding that God has created the world and God thinks it's good and God has good goals for it. God has good dreams for the earth. And that in the long haul, God's got the best ideas. You can't find any better ideas than you can find in God. So you ask, here's what the situation is. What is your will here? And listen And I have been surprised at how many times I come out with when I honestly am asking and I honestly am listening. I've come out of a prayer time about a subject with a clear understanding of what this human being needs to do about that. And when this human being does what God said, or I understood God to say, quite often it makes a radical difference in the situation. And so I have just more and more moved over in the direction of listening. But even praise, if I praise what occurs to me that day to praise for, that will open up in me more things for which I'm grateful. And so each of the kinds of prayer and confession, if I confess, I am just amazed at how my part of what went wrong becomes clearer to me. And so that the confession becomes deeper and richer and more, oh, if you had not done that, if you would do it differently next time, it will be different. And so that the confession becomes a growing part. And but I'm just aware of that. I'm not intentionally doing that. I'm just aware of that the listening prayer all the way through the whole spectrum of prayer is a good thing.
Wonderful. Those are very important takeaway lessons. Thank you. How do you believe prayer can transform and enhance the tapestry of one's life?
Oh, I think what I just said, that if you are listening for what God wishes, the tapestry of your life will be reflective much more of the will of God. And the will of God can't be beat. And the more you are listening to and committing yourself to being a part of the will of God, the better your life will be, and the better your prayers will be. And that doesn't mean you can't go to prayer and complain and whine and whatever else you need, because if you whine and complain and listen, you'll come out with something besides whining and complaining.
Yes. Very beautiful. Thank you. In terms of challenges, did you face any while writing this book, and how did you overcome them?
How did I
Overcome them.
overcome any problems with writing?
Yes.
Oh, I learned to make shorter sentences. um, I just enjoy writing so much. I'm writing a new story right now. And I don't know when I've had so much fun. I've been interviewing a lot of people who are associated with the writing. And I just write, and I write to enjoy, and I write for other people to enjoy. And if I find a good story or mostly it's good stories, I insert them and make them fit the story a little bit, because I want people to look for what's the next story going to be. And so that's I don't have negative feelings about writing. I just think it's great fun.
That's wonderful. I think passion is one of the good qualities that an author should possess. Thank you. How do you incorporate diverse sources such as the scripture, poetry, and personal experiences to explore prayer in your book?
Well, wherever I can get something that does what I want it to do, I take it. And there are lots of the prayers that are in my book are not prayers I made up only. I mean, I've got some favorite people. One of them is a man in Australia, and he publishes. He's retired, Oh God, like I'm an old woman. And he writes prayers and publishes them. And he and I correspond a little bit about it. And he likes my prayers, and I like his prayers. So we use each other's. I don't know whether he uses my stuff. I use his stuff. Um, but he knows it, and he's just happy for me to use it. Is that the question?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
If the viewers purchase the book, how can individuals benefit from using the prayer
Oh,
prompt?
prompts. Oh, yes. Oh, my. Well, most of us are pretty empty brains about how to pray. And we learn these are prayers somebody else has prayed. And by praying them, some of those things will stick in us.
Right.
They will become part of who we are. And we find ourselves um, using what you heard, what you said that said for you what you meant to say. And when you find something like that, um, I've asked people if I can quote him, particularly this man in Australia. If I can quote him, and he said, if you can use it, use it. And I found most people will say that, if it's something that really speaks for you, I wouldn't put it in print and sell it for somebody else. But if it works for you, particularly scripture, if scripture works for you, pray it. You know, that's what it's there for.
Thank you for that. Have you received any memorable feedback or responses from readers who have engaged with your book, Weaving Prayer into the Tapestry of Life?
Well, I should show you one more book. This is, do you speak French?
No, I would love to.
This is Weaving Prayer into the Tapestry of Your Life. It's French. And it has been translated into French, and it is being published by a French publisher. And it's accredited to me, Martha Rowlett, up at the top. And I have the person who did this was a professor of a seminary in France, and he was on sabbatical in this country, and he went to the college, to Claremont University, which is where I wrote the book. And uh, he was on sabbatical for 3 months, and he discovered that book, and he took it back to France with him and used it with some of these classes in English. And he got tired of that, so he wrote me a letter and said, Madam, may I have your permission to translate your book into French? And signed his name. And he said, I learned about it from your professor, Dr. John Cobb. So I thought, this is a scam that is really sophisticated. You get all these crazy things in scams, and I thought, this one just beats them all. But I thought he calls John Cobb's name, so I'll call John and ask him what he thinks. And I did, and he said, oh, he's a wonderful man. Yes, let him have at it. So he had at it, and he translated it into French and used it with his classes. And he had such success that he decided to try to get it published. So he wrote me and said, Madam, may I have your permission to get your book published? And I knew him by then. I said, certainly, and you may have all the royalties for the French version of it. And he just went to work on it, and he got two publishers, and he thought that he had told the first publisher. They had disagreed with something I said, and they wanted to change it. He asked me if he could change it, and I said, no, you print it like it is. So he said, you can't change it. So we thought that ended that contract. So we went to an even bigger and better publisher, and it was exactly what they wanted for something they were doing. So they took the book, and then this couple, I think, must have sued them or something. I don't know. They didn't tell me all about it. All I know is that this book has two publishers and two, I don't know. This is the mark for one publisher, and this is from the mark in Switzerland. So it's now being published in Switzerland and in France but anyway, that has been an absolute delight, just a delight.
That's perfect. Very
And I have one more. I have a couple of friends. One speaks French and one speaks English. And they have been through the two books together, and they're a married couple. And so they use them every night. And she reads this one first, and then he reads it, the same passage in this one. And they've been all the way through the book twice. And they just wanted me to know they're having such a rich experience with using both languages together. So anyway,
amazing.
that's a long answer to a question.
That's perfect. Thank you. For people interested in your book, where can we purchase it?
Anywhere she buy books, not the French, English.
Perfect. Thank you.
And certainly Amazon. And I might add, if you buy it on Amazon and you write back and say really nice things about it, I will thank you.
That's very sweet. Thank you. How was your experience working with Authors Press?
Oh, what really good. I enjoy these people. They write me a lot of interesting stuff, and they cheer for me. And I have appreciated that, having them cheer for me. So
thank you. Thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it.
yes.
Thank you. It was my pleasure speaking with you. Thank you all for joining us today as we explore the wonderful world of Martha Rowlett. I hope you found our conversation as enriching as I did. Remember to check out Martha Rowlett's work and continue to celebrate the magic of storytelling. Again, this is your host, Gab from Authors Press. Until next time, happy reading.
Authors Press.